That's the highest call we as humans have. The highest expression of myself is telling the truth. And what I will not risk is to live a lower life or one diminished by delusion or lies, whether outright or otherwise, in order to be accepted or belong with people who have such terrible conditions for belonging and acceptance.
Hey, I'm Hannah, your host of Too Much, Not Enough. After a life-threatening burnout in 2021, I released the brittle version of success that was slowly killing me and built a life that feels as good as it looks. This podcast is for ambitious, soul-led humans ready to stop shrinking and start living big, bold, fully aligned lives. So if you've ever felt like too much and not enough, join me and my guests as we take an unfiltered deep dive into why being the real you was never the problem, and how to create a life your nervous system actually likes. Let's get into it. As a recovering perfectionist, I was sure that once I made it in life, things would look differently than they do. There would be less mess, less sadness, less disappointment, less anger, more ease, flow, and consistent joy. And I'm so sorry to be the one to tell you this. It's not true. But what is better than that version of the truth I used to hold is that I have learned to embrace the full spectrum of life, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beauty in between, in a way that fuels me forward and is much richer than being in full-time joy and ecstasy. Life isn't meant to be tidy or easy. And no one reminds us of that more beautifully than Dani Kreeft, a chef, writer, and deeply soulful creative whose work celebrates the mess, the magic, and the meaning in all of it. In this episode, Dani and I dive into what it means to live fully, love fiercely, and find nourishment, both literal and emotional, in the waves of life. Dani brings her signature raw honesty and poetic lens to this conversation, and it's one you'll want to soak in like sunlight. Welcome to the podcast, Dani. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm really good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored that you asked.
I am so glad you're here. Honestly, every time I see you post something on Instagram, I feel like it just speaks straight to my soul, whether it's your own writing or something else you've pulled that I imagine you've been inspired by. And I'm like, oh, this is my people so hard. Like I've screenshotted so many things that you've put up there. So thank you for that. Before we dive into the kind of meat of the episode, I would love if you could tell our listeners a little bit more about you.
Yes. So I am a writer primarily. I've written since I was a kid. I published my first book in grade 3. And by published, I mean I just made it.
I love it.
And I really didn't clue into the writing thing until I had been through high school and I went through journalism school. And even then, it wasn't until I had my own greeting card company in my late 20s that writing became like, oh, this is a thing that I love and that I have to contribute to the world. And so I spent most of my life pursuing that. I've done a lot of it on the road, traveling through nearly 24 countries and also writing for other people. And now I'm kind of segueing into cooking and food experiences and curation and just a totally different creative, what's the word I'm looking for? Palette, maybe?
Yep.
Toolkit, I don't know. So
I love it. So we have talked about, you and I, and sort of the few times that we've connected about this idea of like life being messy and the fact that it is a full spectrum, that it's not just one thing all the time. It's not just about being joyful or happy, which is something that I've definitely hoped it was going to be once I'd hacked it or figured it out, that it was just going to be this like constant source of ecstasy. And it is not. It really is all the things, often all at once. And so I'd love to chat about what it means to you to rejoice in that full spectrum of life, and how do we practice that? Because I think it is a practice. It's not something that you ever just like master and then you're like, great, I'm good now. Like, how do you hold everything at once? Just a big one to start us off.
I know. I was like, no softballs, no softballs.
No, that's not
I
what
know
this
I've
podcast
found
is
my
about.
people when they don't entertain a lot of softballs. They just,
No.
yeah, it's very, you're deep end. You just run to the deep end immediately. And I'm like, we're already there.
Yeah.
How do you hold it? The thing that helps me hold it, and I don't even know if it's me holding it all the time. There is a greater source or God, however you would identify it, that is holding me and all of it. So I never feel as though, 1,000 pounds of rocks are on my shoulders. I am a thread in a rug. So I don't ever feel that weight of I have to hold these big, huge things. And even the association that they're big and huge is interesting, because then the automatic association is that it's negative or hard or burdensome or a yoke you just can't bear, when humans can bear anything. So I'm always trying to be more aware of how I frame things in order to process things. And also the association that something like grief might be so much bigger than something like joy that's like so light and breezy. And I'm like, is it though? Like, so that's really interesting. When I think of holding everything, the thing that I think of is understanding that whatever is in front of me right now, I try to frame things in that this is all there is, in acceptance, where if this is the morning that I'm going to have for the rest of my life, if this is a dessert, if this is the cup of coffee, if this is the friend, if this is the inner state that I'm always going to have, and I assume that, instead of being like, oh no, I'm like stuck in a bag I can't get out of, my shoulders drop and I take a deep breath, and all of a sudden the pressure, my ability to hold it is so much easier when I release the pressure that it has to be different, or it has to grow bigger, or somebody else has to be here, or I have to have a bigger apartment, or I can't be single forever, or I must have kids. Or if I just assume that this is going to be my life until I'm 80 years old and I pass away in my sleep, acceptance is the truest way that I have found so far in order to hold things. Because then I'm not holding the future and everything that should happen or could happen or would happen, and I'm not holding the past anymore. It's just, it is what it is, and this is it. And I find that that's the easiest way, whether we're looking for the easy way, I don't know, but that's the easiest way to hold it, because you're not holding anything else at the same time. You're actually accepting that what you're holding is what it is. It doesn't need to be different. And that's emotions, that's events, that can be anything. And I practice that with everything.
Oh my goodness. There's 2-3 things that really stuck out at me there that you said, which I think are just like absolute keys to unlocking the ability to sit with the full spectrum of life. One, you're not holding it alone. And I think we often feel that as humans, we can be quite self-focused. We are constantly, in our heads, inside ourselves, thinking and analyzing and all of that. And this idea, you're not holding it alone, is so freeing to kind of release that weight, or not even put the weight on yourself in the first place, that you are a thread, as you said, which is just so beautiful. And then the other huge piece is really like that acceptance, that when you treat life as it is and not as how you feel it should be, there's another whole layer of freedom in that, and of ability to see things as beautiful. And the other piece you said there, which was such it really hit home for me, is we have been socialized or taught that certain emotions mean certain things, and some are heavier than others. Like you mentioned there, grief versus joy or happiness. But is that true? And I love that question, that to pose to yourself. Is that true? Is grief the heaviness that we understand it to be? And of course, there are elements of it that are heartbreaking, and there are also elements of it that can be, when you let yourself feel it all the way through, can help you soar, help you move into a version of life that is, again, being open to everything. Because to be able to love means that you have to experience grief, and you can't love to the full extent that we have the capability to as humans if you won't allow yourself to feel grief to the full extent. Because I think each one, the deeper you go in, you have to hold the opposite at the same level in order to reach those heights. So everything you just said there was just so beautiful and so true. So thank you for that.
Yes. And they're all interconnected.
Yeah.
The heaviness might be accurate, but then if you look at, am I carrying this alone? And the answer is yes, then it's like you've ascribed something by the way that you're processing it. And I think just kind of the braiding of those elements is really interesting because I don't know that they're singular. I think they're all in the water.
Right? Yeah. Well, and when you look at things connected, as in we as human beings are all of each other and all connected, and then also our feelings all interconnect to each other, that almost releases an element of pressure in itself, like you just said, that it's not just all one thing, or it is not just all you. And once we are able to see that we are a web, that our whole existences are a web and interconnected, you become part of something bigger that then automatically allows you to like maybe float through space a little bit differently. I'm reading a book right now called Bringers of the Dawn. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's teachings of the Pleiadians, which are basically like extraterrestrial beings, very like sort of spiritual, maybe out there for some people, but this idea of like all of our interconnectedness and how we're all working towards like this bigger picture. And when you know, as I was reading it, when I was thinking, oh yeah, like my absolute just over analyzing of my own website and like how I am presenting myself to the world all of a sudden just disappears when you think about like how you're contributing to the larger tapestry of life.
Yeah, I can make it seem quite futile.
Yeah. Sometimes a bit depressing, but
But I was gonna say, it was like, I think that when I think of futile, I think it feels like it's gonna be negative, but I'm like, but that's the release. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything. And we're so afraid that we don't mean something or that this doesn't mean something, and it's like, it doesn't. That's the pinhole. And then all the freedom is on the other side. Then you get to play, then you get to make mistakes, then you get to fail, you get to whatever. But those labels don't even count on the other side of that. So then it's like, you really just get to play, full stop, period, end of sentence.
Which is, I think, the key to life is like when you get to that place of being able to play and be present, you've hacked it. It's very hard to get to that place of being able to release how essentially unimportant you are as an individual on this planet. I think that is like, you know, we grow up and we are taught you got to make something of yourself. You've got to be something, whatever that is, especially I would say in North American society. And there's quite an individualistic lens to that. And then to then have the kind of complete breakdown of that identity. That's not easy, but that's why I think there's also such a beautiful reward, like you said, on the other side of it, of freedom, of being able to not feel like everything rests on what you make of yourself and instead what you make of life and what is presented in front of you.
Yeah, I would probably argue the opposite, that we think that that's the hard thing. But I'm like, how hard is it to try to make something of yourself? How hard is it to try to work your whole life to have a monument on a university grant, like a 2x2 foot of grass? Like, how hard is it to like work your whole life to make sure you've left a legacy and that somewhere your name is in lights? And it's like, I'm not invalidating all of that, but I think we're actually doing the hard thing all the time. And the easy thing is to just let it go.
Yes.
Just let it go. And your body responds to that. My body responds. As soon as I say that, I relax. I get goosebumps. I feel lighter because that pressure cooker of building and becoming an identity and not having it validated that you already have it, I would argue that that's why everyone's on such a struggle bus, because that's what's hard. And the belief that it's hard to let go is what keeps us holding on.
Oh my gosh, so beautifully put. And I love that you talked about how it feels in your body too. I relate to that so much, that the moment that I stop pushing, I can literally feel like it's like a, you know, the release of like a gasket in my body, and all of that pressure is, that built up pressure is coming out, and it's like I'm deflating, but not in a negative way, in a really beautiful way of just feeling like more space available in my body to let in what is meant to come in versus, like gripping on so tight. And listen, I've spent many years trying to release that, forcing that white knuckling of life. And I think I've done a pretty good job at it, but it still comes around every time to time. And it's a constant like course correction and taking stock of what's going on in my life and being like, like even this weekend, a friend invited me up to Collingwood, which is like a beautiful area north of Toronto here. And it was sort of last minute. And my whole body just exhaled when she invited me up. And I was like, yep, that's exactly what I need. Everything fell into place, found a place to stay, so on and so forth. And then just like headed up there for like 24 hours, not even. Driving back yesterday was just this like, I felt so free and open. And it's like, when we do follow those threads and let go of what we should be doing. Because I had plans here in the city that I had committed to, and I was like, I really should do that. But nothing about my body wanted to do that. It was like closing in on itself, thinking about doing that versus just saying, fuck it, I'm going to leave the city. I'm going to go swim in Georgian Bay, and I'm going to hang out with some friends cooking, food over the fire. And it was just like, okay. And when we use our bodies as that compass, what we say yes to and what we say no to becomes so much easier.
And the segue into a conversation of like how we're engineered to not trust our bodies is like so fascinating. And I won't even like drag us over that, right? But I'm like, oh man, there's so many inroads to that where I'm like, yep.
Oh my gosh, we could, maybe that's a whole other episode we need to do where we talk about like how we are so, taught out of trusting our bodies when they are the best compass we could possibly have. It's almost mind-blowing to me when I actually slow down and trust my body at how easily my life starts flowing from there. But I would love to get even deeper into your creative side because you are such a, at its core, creative, from your writing to your cooking and connection that you create. And you've worn many creative hats in your life and continue to. So how has creativity and diving into the more creative parts of you helped you process and celebrate essentially your humanity, your existence on this planet?
Yeah. When I was thinking about this, creativity is always showing me the true nature of what it is to be human, because creativity is subjective, it's interpretive, it's not black or white, it's not A or B, it's not good or bad. It can't really be categorized. I don't know if there's anything that you could say it isn't art. That subjectivity is why a lot of people really, like physics or science, like there's this plus this equals this. And with creativity, it obliterates that. And I think that is so much, at least for me, as far as what I relate to being a human, but I think this isn't all of us, it is so much more of a signal of who we are, because you can't explain it and it comes from somewhere else and it's made up of just like magic and mystical, like, yes, we are cells and there's science and etc. But like when you think of creativity, it embodies everything it is to be human. It's unexplainable, it's fascinating, it's infinite. Any word you use to describe creativity describes us, and it breaks us out of the categorization or the left or right or anything that's divisive. Creativity kind of dissolves and it goes, we're all made of the same thing and we're all just exploring under the parachute and figuring out what that expression of it is. When I'm in a creative state or in a flow state or when I'm creating things, I feel the most human because it's the most undescribable state. There's no equation there and there's no definitions there. Like you go down the path of like what Rick Rubin talks about, his whole book. And I love it because it's very like, if you like it, that's all that matters. It's not for an audience. And there's all these tenets of it that are completely opposed to the economics of art. But I feel like when I remember that I'm an artist at my purest heart, that isn't a role or even a gifting. It is what it is to be human. Full stop.
Oh my goodness. So beautiful. And as part of that, I'd love to ask, because you talked a little bit there about like how your art is not meant for an audience. It's meant for you. And like, obviously there is interaction when it comes to putting art out there and people's opinions and things like that. But how have you grown as an artist, as a creative, to be able to create art that is for you and exploring your humanness and kind of gotten over, or at least been able to turn down external validation? Because I think that is something that comes up a lot as people start to explore their creativity and start to put themselves out there, especially in the age of social media and likes and views and engagement, that it's meant to be for consumption. And so how do we break free from that? How did you break free from that to be able to make art that like just really truly resonated with you?
I can't sit here and say like I'm free from that. It's in the water. So it's a constant reminder to stay conscious of it. I think for me, the only reason I write and put out art is to be honest with myself. So if I'm not being honest with myself, I just have no interest in making it because I know I can feel it. I know it's scaffolding or artifice or mask or performing. I know when I've put out pieces that I'm like, I'm putting it out for reasons other than to satiate my own soul's questions. And I hate it. I usually delete it like 10 minutes later because I'm like, it doesn't pass the litmus test. It just doesn't. And only through time have I been able to get to know myself more and more so that I know when I'm cutting right to the bone or when I'm just kind of like padding the edges and trying to say something pretty or, socially acceptable, whatever. And it's interesting. I was talking to a friend just the other day and I was saying, I think I'm entering my creative era of not caring what anybody thinks. And it happened that I had put something out that day and I got a couple DMs that were full of disapproval. Ooh. And I was like, ooh, I was like spicy. I was like, okay. Because I think with social media, art has this label now of being communal. And I'm like, it isn't. You assuming that's for you is your problem. And you're getting emotional needs met on your end by telling me what you don't like or what you would have changed or whatever. It has nothing to do with me. And that self-loop and protecting that and going, I wrote this out of a conversation that I was having with God, with myself, just in my own internal space. And you are not my audience. You are a fly on the wall by default of this app. And it's interesting too, because a lot of it is to connect with others, to look out at a crowd of people and see who raises their hand and is like, me too. But it's never been why I write. I write because there are things in me that have to come out and be expressed. They need to be expressed, but they don't need to be heard. I've let that go. It relies on my mouth and not your ears. And that is a beautifully selfish, sacred thing that I protect full tilt. And I think I was a little bit born with that blunt edge of refusal.
I love that. And I think that is what has made you into the artist and the writer that you are today, in being able to, like I said at the top of this episode, pierce into me. I will only speak for myself in this case by putting up your words and me feeling like she gave form to something that I didn't even know I was feeling, but has been sitting there for a long time. And then all of a sudden I read your words and I'm able to like process and transmute something by reading what you have to say. And that only, I believe, comes very much from your ability to be truthful to your core, above and beyond fear of what the reaction may be from certain people.
Because what is that worth? What is someone's reaction worth? It's a fart. It passes in 2 seconds. No, I will not be subject to some audience that I did not choose saying things I don't care about. No.
Yes. I love this. I want to go back to something you said there, though, about art not being communal. And I think that actually has like a direct connection to one's life not being communal, in the sense of it not being communal from a like direction standpoint. And let me explain what I mean by that. I very much learned that like, while I live my life in community and in relation to others, and while it is important that is a give and a take, and sometimes with certain relationships, a compromise, especially, my partner who I live with and I'm building a life with. But when I stopped acting as if life was communal from a perspective of other people's opinions about what I was doing, things shifted very quickly for me. And so I think that there is a mirror between what you're saying there about art and creativity and writing not being like a communal exercise of gathering opinions and then informing the art. I think life and how you live is also not an activity of gathering other people's opinions and then living from there. And so I think what you've said there about how important it is that you are using your writing to transmute and experience being human and everything that comes with that, again, that full spectrum. We will not, as individuals, get what we probably are craving out of life if we are approaching our lives in a way of constantly asking or expecting feedback to then adjust what we are doing. And so I guess what I'm saying here is that the ability to apply how you approach writing, creativity, and truth to how you approach life, like anyone can approach life too. And the less that you allow other people's opinions to adjust your course, the freer and probably happier you will feel in general with how honest you are being about things. And that's not to say not to care, because I think it's hard to not care, but there's a difference between caring what others think in relation to art and to actually allow that to change how you put your art out there.
Yeah, because that asks, like, to what end do I need to care? What is the purpose of me? If I care what you think about what I posted on Instagram 10 minutes ago, for example, I write to understand myself and to understand the human condition and what's going on within me. The byproduct of that, not the purpose, the byproduct is understanding greater humanity, because understanding self is understanding I'm a thread in a rug and there's a bunch of other threads and we all experience such similar things, but it's a involuntary byproduct. I don't choose that. You can think, anybody who follows me, they can think whatever they want. But as far as caring, yes, it's nice if 100 people are like, oh my gosh, that was amazing. You put words to things that I couldn't. And I really just appreciate like all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, that has more risk of me then creating more things like that than me going, that's very nice. Thank you. I am undeterred. I will still continue to walk in the woods, even if 100 people are like, but that tree was really nice, or that direction was really good. I can't really afford to care, because then the food coloring gets in the water. Then there's other hands in it. And it's not about being like a purist. Maybe it is, but I really need to know, at least for me, that it's like, it's me and God all the time. That's it. And if I care if people like it, care if it resonates, care if they read it, and that's so hard to master, but I run the risk of derailment with good intention or otherwise. And so unless I can find a purpose for caring what other people think, it's really useless.
So well said. And I also think that it would stunt your exploration, like you said, of going further. If you're like, oh, they like this, I'm going to stay in this realm, then how much do you miss? Would your book have been written if you had honed in on the thing that people were liking and not continued to explore? And I would love to chat a little bit more about your book and how it came about and your process and how you were able to kind of bare your soul to create and birth this beautiful thing into the world.
Yeah. Well, for 7 years, I didn't know that I was writing it while I was doing it. So putting it in permanent form does feel a little bit scarier. And then, you know, maybe if I would have started with that intent, I would have, but I'm glad. I don't want anything to muddy the waters. But my book, again, it's about me asking the questions and trying to unravel myself and understand. And that has nothing to do with other people. So, and I also like being able to tell the truth, whether people consider it offensive or ugly or disgusting or lovely or splendid or beautiful, whatever. I think that that's the highest call we as humans have. The highest expression of myself is telling the truth. And what I will not risk is to live a lower life, or one diminished by delusion or lies, whether outright or otherwise, in order to be accepted or belong with people who have such terrible conditions for belonging and acceptance. No, I will not do that. I will not sign up for that. So for me, I admire people who tell the truth. And I think we're all afraid of it. And we think it's brutal and painful and, you know, it's a spear, it's not a hug, whatever. And I'm like, the most loving thing that you can do towards yourself and towards others is to tell the truth. And I'm not signing up for all the side effects of not telling the truth. The fake relationships or the illnesses or living a life that I don't agree with in 10 years, I won't do it.
I'm a little lost for words right now because, again, you've done it again, Dani. You've just spoken.
There's no truth. It's like,
what's the point?
What's the point? And that's where I'm coming from, where it might be my like Gemini thing or my Enneagram 8 or my manifestor, like all of the things add up so that I'm like, it's either the truth or nothing. Because 89% no, 40% no, 9% no. Speak the truth and everything will fall into place. But if you cannot operate or will not operate from truth, you have signed up for the wave of horror behind it.
Yes.
And a lot of that is very soft and benign. It's more a local anesthetic that you don't really realize. But I just value truth so much because we just don't have a lot of time. And I'm one specific person that's going to flare like a spark for 20 seconds and then disappear into the ground. I just don't have time to not tell the truth. That's a ridiculous request.
No, and I totally agree. And this is something that I have personally struggled with for most of my life. And I'm still in the process of finding my real voice because of this fear of, hurting other people's feelings, I guess, is at the base of it. Whereas what you've just said there is something that resonates so much for me, in the sense that like, I'm going to hurt your feelings more if I keep pretending or keep skirting around the truth or dulling down what is honest. And what am I then sowing into our future relationship or our future experiences if I'm not telling you the full truth? Because, we're going to get 6 months, 2 years, 5 years down the line, and we're going to find ourselves, or at least one of us are going to find ourselves in a place in the relationship where it no longer works. I think what really stuck out for me there that you said was really about this idea that like, what are we creating in the present by not telling the truth that is going to impact us in the future, whether that be illness, whether that be disconnection, whether that be whatever it is. And also this idea that humans somehow can't handle the truth. Our systems, our societies, our leaders have created this idea that we can't handle the truth, and therefore everything needs to be done behind closed doors. And I think, part of that is this idea that people are doing nefarious things that they shouldn't be, but also like truth is a place from which we can actually grow, a place from which we can actually say, okay, it's hard to look at. It feels icky maybe to be told the truth in certain circumstances. This is actually substance I can work with now. I can actually like move forward from here to be able to see. Like, a conversation I've been having with myself more recently is this idea that I've been living very much in this, like, I don't know if you've heard of the book, The Gain and the Gap, but I've been living very much in the gap, like hugely in the gap. And I have been keeping myself miserable, thinking that I was building this life that I really loved. And I was building the life I really loved, but my attitude towards it, my perspective towards it wasn't. And it wasn't until I had this honest conversation with myself that I was the perpetrator. I was the culprit here, nothing else outside of me. And I was taking radical responsibility and really like speaking the truth, even though it was hard to hear, that I was able to start actually doing something about it. Because before that, I was kind of hiding from myself, and there's nothing you can do from that place except continue to hide.
That's the thing. There is no honor without truth. I don't think there is any service without truth. Tell me what kind of love you can get without truth. That's the center of the wheel. And you take that out and you look around at society and you see a lot of the evidence of an inability to be who you really are, to communicate what you really mean, all of those things. And I would argue the only reason that we find it hard is because it's rare. And so it kind of shocks us. It pricks our ears because there's friction, there's conflict there. And our whole society operates around frictionlessness, around comfort, around ease, around easy. And so we label things bad as soon as there's friction. But if there's no friction, there's no meaning.
Totally agree. And I also, again, going back to this idea of how do you rejoice in the full spectrum of life? How do you experience the full spectrum of life? Part of that has to be friction, because otherwise you don't grow, you don't ascend to other levels of understanding. And therefore, how are you going to get the full part of the full spectrum if you stay in the safe corner of frictionlessness?
Totally.
If that's even a word, frictionlessness.
Right? Frictionless is probably. I don't know.
Now.
I'm the writer. I should know, but whatever.
All right. So segueing a little bit, something that we've touched on in various different ways already throughout the conversation is this idea that grief and joy are not separate experiences. They're intertwined, two sides of the same coin, or perhaps even the same experience, because in order to have joy or love, even let's call it, grief has to be present as well. So how have you held both or multiple emotions at once, seemingly contradicting emotions, without losing yourself, especially as you dive into your humanity through your writing? How do you hold these like really extreme experiences in life and not lose yourself in examining our humanity? Because sometimes it can be dark and hard.
Yeah. When I was considering this question, my brain went into a line of questioning of like, what is the value of keeping yourself? Like, if the fear is losing yourself, what is it worth to keep yourself? And are you keeping your soul and your spirit, or are you keeping your identity? Like, I'm 41, I live in Calgary, my name is Dani Kreeft. Like, what am I so afraid of losing? Because I think that that's what makes us hold on to small things, is just this fear that we're gonna lose. And I'm like, yeah, but what if you went fully into the emotions and And those were entire homes and bassinets for your actual soul and spirit to move through. I don't know, we live in such an identity building culture. We're so obsessed with ourselves. We're so obsessed with who we are. We're so obsessed with what we think and what we know and what we agree with and who we know. And
Yep.
I think it is a complete brick wall into experiencing ourselves as the thread in the rug of what are the experiences that are at the buffet of life. And I would argue that not a lot of those things have anything to do, maybe none of them have anything to do with entering in as a certain secured saran wrapped person. I think you have to lose that. It's not a devaluing of it. It's just an acknowledgement that that doesn't exist. It's not real. It's what you create. And I'm not saying like I'm a 41-year-old female as far as being on this planet and I was born in Canada. Like there's facts, but I think that the construction of identity is just a lot of a safety mechanism against feeling a lot of what you're talking about. And so the interest in keeping oneself while feeling, they're always going to be at war because this is kind of, it doesn't matter. Just let it go. And I'd also argue that you can't feel anything if you're present. And if you are holding on to something, you can't be present because your brain is like fascinating to this other thing. The present can only be experienced if you are submitted and surrendered to what the present is bringing you. And if you insist on being a certain thing or looking a certain way in order to experience its gifts, then I would say that you're signing up for a life of half gifts or maybe none at all because you're so stuck on, I'm a morning person, I'm an introvert, I'm an extrovert at parties, I'm whatever. We really like to set up all these pylons, and I think, a flood of emotions is just going to demolish those, and that's why we don't go there.
If I could give you an A++ on an answer, like, holy shit.
Doesn't that make sense though? Like, what is the value of self? Like, it's like, it doesn't matter.
Well, you're so right. And like, if you are able to conquer or not even conquer the fear, because I think fear is a very important part of life and that we don't conquer it. We become more familiar with it. We allow it to move in and live there with us as we continue going about our daily routines. But if we are able to live with the fear and not let it stop us of losing ourselves, actually letting go of that identity, then that is the key to experiencing more depths, more duality of life. Yeah.
We're back to the playpen hole.
100%.
If you have to fit all of your luggage and all of your shit through this hole and you think it's so hard, just let go. But assessing like, what is it worth for me to have an identity that I can then express outwards, which is a lot of social media. It's like, there's a lot of things that I love about social media and a lot that I don't. A lot of it is just kind of identity construction and a big military budget. It's just a lot of defense.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, man, I think that's where we're going wrong. We're just so focused on what we're holding on to. And we think whatever the emotion or the experience is going to be too much and it's going to wash us away. And that's going to be a bad thing.
But it's not necessarily. In fact, that's probably what a lot of us need, is to get washed away and really stripped down to like the bare bones of us, to understand that like, we are valuable without that identity. We still exist as valuable, worthy humans when we are being just human, rather than I am, like you said, Hannah, 36, lives in Toronto, somatic coach, so on and so forth, to just like, what happens when it does get stripped all away? And then how would you allow yourself to feel when you don't have to present an identity or the same identity every day? Because that identity can shift and change and move. It's a living, breathing thing. I think that's one of the best answers I've ever gotten to one of my questions. I'm like so excited. So I know that a lot of your travels that you talk about informed your writing, or informs your writing, I should say. And also now that you are sort of leaning more into gathering and supper clubs, what are kind of the main things, let's say the 3 main things that you have learned about connection, about belonging, when it comes to your experiences with traveling, writing, and now your supper clubs?
Yeah. Oh, man. I have learned that it is a supreme act of intention that builds it. It's not by default. It's not automatic. It's not just going to be given to you. just because you're around other humans doesn't mean you have community. You actually have to like build, make effort, and confront all the things that you don't like about people, and people are fickle and they sign up and then you have to intentionally build it. And it's very easy to believe that by being somewhere else, you would be someone else. And I've experienced that when I've been in Barcelona, when I've been in Sicily, when I've been in Los Angeles, any place, Portugal, like I've been all over the place, Mozambique, doesn't matter. If you think that by transporting yourself somewhere else, you will act differently, you are a very cute fool. And I relate because I was one at one time. And I remember like one night I wrote a piece about it actually in my book, and it was about walking around in LA. I was right by Echo Park, and I was walking around, and it was Friday night, and you can hear people, you know, with libations and all the things, and hanging out at restaurants, and people walking to bars and all these kinds of things. And I'm like, you can be in a place that is as loud as a concert. It can be as thriving as a major metropolis city, like all of those things. But unless you step forward, unless you get in the pool, unless you risk looking silly by showing up by yourself or whatever, it does not matter. A place will never force you to, it cannot force you to become something that you will not work toward being. So yeah, go live in New York and you can have just as much community as you do in Tabor, Alberta. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You might even have more in Tabor because there's just, I don't know, less people, whatever. But I think the intentionality, I think that kind of gets lost over time. We just take people for granted and just time goes by, but you have to very much intentionally create it. I think that with all that's burgeoning and happening with AI and technology and computers and online and Zoom and all of the things, without cracking that whole Pandora's box, I am so deeply encouraged to be a human. I don't feel we're going to get replaced and we're going to be irrelevant, whatever. And I'm like, we are becoming, our stock is rising.
Yes.
Like, it can feel like it's going down because, you know, we're going to get whatever, all the fears. But our stock is rising because unless you are human, you cannot be human. And so what makes our lives and our experiences meaningful is being human and being in a human body and understanding how the heart and the soul and connection, how everything works together so that you can relate to one another and you can learn and you can grow. And like just the whole robot, automated tech, ChatGPT, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I look at it and I'm like, our stock is rising, man. Our stock is rising so hard. And understanding that wherever you go, whether it's Europe and New Zealand, I've been all over Africa, people are sitting down and eating and talking to one another about their day and the weather and who they're with and what's happening and trying to process their emotions. And that will be the experience until the end of time, until we're obliterated, whatever. And so I think that's the other thing about connection and belonging. I think sometimes it can feel like it has to be this big thing or big event, or we have to be going to the cool parties, or even like supper clubs where it's like, oh, I need to, and I'm like, no, meeting my friend in a half an hour and being like, how was your morning? The littlest things are what make it all meaningful. So instead of looking for acceptance, belonging, connection in a big DJ set or a very popular coffee shop or whatever, and I love those things, it's finding it in those micro minuscule things. It's always the first things you don't see. And so I'm always looking for it there because, you know, you might go to one wedding a year if you think all of the fun and happiness is going to be that you're just going to miss it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, being really intentional, knowing that you as a human is all you need to be in order to find it, and then not trying to find it in big, splashy, Instagrammable places and things. Yeah, that's rare. And then it makes it a kind of a scarcity commodity. When you're like, oh no, I can go downstairs and talk to the pizza guy, and that's just as much connection as whatever themed party everyone's talking about.
Yeah, the scarcity commodity really hits there. Like, I think it all roots back to, like you said, presence. If you can cultivate presence in your life, if you can be present, you are going to be able to find connection anywhere and everywhere all throughout your day. Because if you are present when you walk into a store and you actually make eye contact with the person working there and ask them how their day was, you're finding connection there in a way that if you're in there and you're distracted and you're on your phone and you're looking at the racks and not paying attention to what's around you, you miss that moment of connection, which could be a deep moment of connection that you'll remember for months, if not years. And from that, I think your effort and intentionality, what you said there, so important. It doesn't just happen. If you are sitting at home and hoping the connection and belonging is going to fall at your doorstep, it will not. Again, I was away this weekend and it was my friend's birthday and she created this beautiful gathering at her home. And I could see it took so much effort and intention from them. But from that bred this beautiful experience of connection for me as a guest that I will remember for a very, very long time. It reminded me of the importance of community. It reminded me of the importance of our connection to the earth and each other and how we cannot take that for granted. But, when I kind of left there thinking, does this only exist outside of the city? Does this only exist in Collingwood, in nature, in this specific community? And I'm like, no, I can make this in the city. And again, I love what you said about wherever you go, there you'll be essentially. You can't move to Barcelona and think that you are going to have a completely different life. Yes, your daily routine may look different, but the one consistent is you. You have taken yourself there. So if you're not willing to do the effort, intentionality, and presence piece, nothing is going to change. It's just going to be a different looking environment and different opportunities for you to continue to waste away, essentially. And this isn't to say it as in like, you're doing it wrong, but it's just that like, if we can all take that moment of like hard honesty with ourselves and say, how much am I intentionally cultivating connection in my life? How much am I putting down my phone and asking the questions and putting myself maybe in slightly uncomfortable positions in order to create that connection? To be annoyed by another person is a byproduct of connection. So if you are avoiding being inconvenienced or annoyed, you're probably not going to find real connection because that is part of it. And it's just, again, how can we create the connection that we crave instead of waiting for it to like be placed at our feet so that we look up from our phones long enough to realize it's there?
Yeah, I think it's very much, I loved going to all the places that I've loved, but I definitely noticed a trend in myself that I had to wake up to, that I expected the outside world to pull things out of me. And the outside world, to my chagrin, was neutral. It was like, that's not my job.
Yeah.
And thank God. New York, LA, Barcelona, Cape Town, doesn't matter. Nothing is going to pull something out of you. And that's why the phone is so easy, because you can get that feeling without doing anything. And so,
yes,
that's a whole other thing. But I had to really learn that a relationship was not going to pull it out of me. A city was not going to pull it out of me. A bigger, better, dreamier, dream life, crazy Pinterest board plan was not going to pull it out of me. Nothing is going to pull it out of you. You have to mine your own garden. You have to find your own gold and you offer it, but nobody is in charge of digging that out of you. And I had to really go through a lot to understand that if I wasn't the version of myself that I wanted to be, it wasn't because I was in the wrong city or with the wrong person or had the wrong friends or whatever. It was really, I was just being a lazy caretaker of my own self. I was like, oh, wow, you don't want to be that. It's nobody else's fault. If you want more friends, if you want to be in those photos on a women's trip, if you want whatever, you pull that out of yourself and you go find it. But if you're just waiting at home for invitations, that's why you're on your phone so much.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I think that is a beautiful place to wrap up this conversation, even though I would love to continue for hours and hours and hours.
Part 2, part 3, part 4.
Yeah. Seriously, that was just like a wealth of knowledge. And thank you so much for sharing it, and so beautifully said as well, which doesn't surprise me as the incredible writer that you are. But on that note, I want to go into our rapid-ish fire questions round, which we wrap up every one of our podcast episodes with. And so the first question is, what is something that you used to hide that you now lead with?
The first thing that came to my mind is how loud I laugh.
I love that.
I have a really loud laugh, and I've allowed myself to forget that it has to be a certain temperature and tone in order for me to not alarm people or scare people. I get to decide that, and I get to just be myself. And not that I used to hide that, but I used to overthink it. I'd be like, it was hilarious. And then I'd be like, oh gosh. And I don't do that cowering thing after anymore. No.
Love that.
Your ears can suffer. I don't care.
What would you say to someone who is afraid of taking the step towards putting their art out in the world? There's fear, they're on the precipice. What would you say to get them over the edge?
Make a list, however long, of all the things that you're afraid to be called, and then work through them either on your own, with a professional, with somebody, with a friend. Break them down. You have to break down how big those things are to realize it's all just like sand and ash and dust. And anyways, like for me, I had to break down that people would call my stuff fluff, or that they would call me an Instagram poet, or that they would just think it was too small. This was just a weird 30-second run-in with a guy who was painting his fence. This doesn't matter. I really had to make an actual list and name the fears. What are the words? If somebody got into my DMs and were like, I think your writing is fluff, why does that hurt my feelings? Am I afraid it's fluff? Work through that.
I just love how useful that response is.
Yeah.
Like something that people can action right away, because the thing is we need whatever you have to put out there. So it is your job. It is the thing that you need to focus on to break down, like you said, the fears in order to put out the thing into the world, because multiple people out there need whatever art you have to put out there. So thank you for that.
And you need it most of all.
True.
You need that process.
True.
And so you're just blocking yourself from not being able to tell the truth or express yourself. And you'll find things on that list that surprise you.
Yeah.
And that you won't want to admit. And it just basically reveals your own judgments. Because like if I go up to a section of Instagram poets in my hometown, I'm like, not real literature. And then I'm like, ooh, ouch. Like,
such a good point. Where you're judging others is likely where you're judging yourself the most.
I'm afraid it's fluff.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. What is something that you think the world needs to hear right now?
It's not about being right.
Very nice. And finally, where can people get more of you?
Oh, they can follow me on Instagram, Dani Kreeft Writes. They can definitely, buy my book, because that's almost 300 pieces that take you through 7 years of traveling and reflecting and meet cutes and all kinds of things. If you're in Calgary, please keep your eye on my Instagram so that you can come and feast. I want to be able to do a matcha cafe in the fall. I don't always want to host it in my home. I just want to open it up, and I want to bring people in who know a lot about a subject, and so we can learn and eat, and I'm just flexing with all these different ways to build community here, but that would be through my Instagram. And yeah, that's probably it. Those are the three main ways.
As always, we will have Dani's Instagram and the link to buy her book in our show notes there. So please check them out. But otherwise, thank you so much for your time, Dani, for your beautiful words, for sharing your truth. I needed to hear it. And so I know that many others listening needed to hear it as well.
Thank you for having me. It was an honor to be asked and to just flesh out a lot of these things and to understand where we're coming from and what we feel and what we think, and to share that. I think that's connection. That's the best.
Oh, this is
it.
What life is.
Yeah.
For me, certainly. So thank you.
Next time we're having snacks, we're having food. This will be in person, because that really is the upgrade. That's the 2.0.
Yes. I would love to do that. Well, until next time, folks, thank you for listening.